So I hope that everything that we talk today will add a lot of value to the people that we're listening to us.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of things going on in today's in the industry today with everything that we're
Yes.
going through. So Isabel, let's start off with the agents that may not know too much of what a title company does, or for those people in general that don't really understand. Can you tell us a little bit of what a title and escrow company does?
Okay. Well, a title company is a neutral party to the transaction. Usually, what we do is we receive your file and we take care of requesting a title search to make sure that the property doesn't have any liens, any code enforcement liens, any title defects that will need to be fixed prior to the transfer of title. We also take care of requesting a city lien search report, which is a report that we request from the city or municipality where the property belongs to make sure that there are no open permits, expired permits, violations, delinquent taxes, or utility accounts that will need to be fixed as well. Okay. We
Right.
also take care of requesting an estoppel letter from the associations if the property belongs to a condominium or to an association that will require us to get one. Basically, I don't know, for agents that do not know, an estoppel letter is a document that will let us know if the owner is up to date or if there are any balances. We'll see payment cycles so that we can do proper prorations when we do our closing.
Right.
It'll let us know if the association is in any type of litigation, okay? And also will let us know if the property has any violations that will need to be fixed, okay?
Right.
So
Right.
basically, we're the ones that take care of gathering or requesting all these important reports to clear title of the property and facilitate the transfer from the seller to the buyer. That's what a title company do.
And that is just the beginning. I mean, it might not sound like a lot, but really, when you're
No,
under
it's a lot.
contract or you're in the process, I mean, there's a lot more that goes behind the scenes, you know. Because just saying it like
Yes.
that, it's a lot of work. But really, when you're under contract, Isabel, and I see all the hard work that you guys do, all the communication that needs to be done, because you guys are communicating with the buyer, with the seller, with the
Yes.
blenders, with the money. Where's the money? Where's the escrows? Making escrow letters, talking to the associations. Sometimes it's so hard to get in
Yes.
touch with them, so you guys have to like, it's it's a lot more than there's a lot
Yes.
to what you
If
guys
we
do.
get into the details of what a title company does, it's a lot because we're the ones that hold escrow. We're the ones that give you your escrow letter for your first deposit, your second deposit. As I said, once we assign the file to our closing department, we take care of requesting these reports. We take care of studying the reports and clearing title. At the same time, we're communicating with buyers, sellers, listing agents, buyer agents, and lenders if it's a finance transaction. So we gotta make sure that we're clearing title requirements, and at the same time, we're following up with the lenders to make sure that they're clearing conditions. So
Mm,
once we're both clear, then we gotta go and follow some process to make sure that everything is fine and we'll be able to finalize the transaction. Once we finalize the transaction, once everybody signed, we are the ones that take care of disbursing the transaction. And when I talk about disbursing a transaction, I talk about sending the funds to the sellers, okay?
right.
Paying any mortgages or any liens that will need to be paid at closing, sending checks, like for
Huh.
example, for homeowners association balances, we pay that. We pay commissions out of the closing. We're the ones that cut those checks. All that is involved in disbursing a transaction. And then after that, we take care of post-closing, which is reviewing the file and recording everything in public records. And yeah,
That's
it's a
crazy.
process, but it's amazing. Like, I really like the industry and I really like what we do. So for me, talking about it, I could talk for hours.
I love that you're passionate about it. You're super passionate about it, and I love that about you because I know that Um, so what I love about working with you guys is that your communication, I mentioned this before, the communication that you and your team have are amazing because, pretty much you guys are right away, as soon as you're under contract, you're reaching out to the buyers, to the sellers, to lenders, to, condominiums, and you guys are really on top of it. So me as a real estate professional, I don't have to really be worried so much about, hey, did they reach out to my clients? Did they reach out to the sellers? Did they reach out to this person? I don't really have to be behind that because, we're really busy with our business. So that's something that I really, really love about you guys. And, for those real estate agents listening, I really hope you're working with a title company that is, up to like on their best level at communication. Like communication is definitely key with the whole real estate, especially when it comes to title,
Yes.
right, Isabel?
Yeah, well, I've been 10 years in the industry, and what I've seen is that, as you know, I cannot tell you that transactions will be perfect because they won't. There are so many things that happen in the process. But what we
Right.
realize is that if we communicate with everybody through the whole transaction, it makes it easier. Okay?
Right.
We're gonna work with transactions that are super easy, but we're gonna work with transactions that could get difficult.
Right.
But the success of each transaction is having our closing agent communicating with all the parties so that they understand what's going on, and also explain to them how we're gonna fix any problems that could bump in the way. So that's why for us,
Yeah.
communication is key, and as you said, it's like the, I don't know, key factor for a successful transaction, even if it becomes difficult.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, and we're going to get into this right now, this next subject, but communication is so important because at the end of the day, there's money involved. And nobody wants to lose
Yes,
their money. Nobody wants to mess with money. There's a lot of legal things
that is
involved. A
correct.
lot. So let's get into that right now, actually. So what how can an agent not lose their client's deposit? What are things that you see, or what are things you could tell us, that you can really
Okay.
pinpoint for those agents that might not know? What thing can they do?
Okay. A way for an agent to protect their client's deposit is to first understand, of course, the contract and know which dates are the important ones that they need to watch for. Okay. So if you get into a contract and you um, like write down all the critical dates,
Mm-hmm.
you will be on top of every date and make sure that if you're running close, you can request an extension. Because if you pass from those dates,
Mm-hmm.
then your client could be at default. And when I talk about critical dates, I'm talking about the executed date, which is not the date that the buyer signed the contract, is the date that the seller signs.
Right.
Okay, that's the executed date. Then you got to watch out for the first deposit. Usually, the first deposit needs to come into the escrow account 3 days after the contract being executed. So if you leave it blank, it's 3 days. If not, you can just put another date if you want, but usually the standard is 3 days.
Okay.
Some contracts could have a second deposit. If they have a second deposit, if you leave the space in the contract of the first page of the contract blank, it will be
Mm-hmm.
10 business days. Okay. If you put a date, then you gotta watch out for that date.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The same thing for inspections. Very important. Okay. Inspections, if you leave the space in the contract that talks about inspections blank,
Right.
by default is, I believe is
15
15
days.
days.
Right.
Exactly, unless you put another date. So
Right.
that's a very important date, because if you do inspections and your clients realize that there's something wrong with the property that will need to be fixed, you have some time to negotiate with the seller to see if they want to give you a credit or if they're going to fix whatever came up on the inspection, right?
Hmm.
If you do the inspection and then you don't negotiate anything, and you, after the inspection period, you decide to withdraw from the contract, then the seller can say, nope, I'm not gonna sign that release and cancellation. and then we will not be able to return the money, because you got to understand that when a first deposit or a second deposit comes into an escrow account, it would be locked. We cannot determine that we can give it to you just because a buyer is requesting it from us.
Right.
In order for us to release it, we need a release and cancellation form signed by buyer and seller. Or if they go into an escrow dispute, then a court order, and then with a court order, we'll be able to release it. So you gotta be super careful with these critical dates. Another critical date is the loan commitment if you're dealing with a finance transaction.
Right.
So you gotta be super on top of that loan commitment date.
Mm.
And if you're running close to it and you talk to your lender and you ask them, is the loan commitment gonna be ready? Are you gonna send it to me? If they said they will be giving it to you by the day, that's good. But if they say that they'll need extra days, then you need to request an extension for every date that you'll not be able to make it. And by doing that, you'll be protecting your client's deposit. Okay? And the same thing for a closing date. If you're running very close to a closing date and you see that there are some issues in title or some issues with the lender that are trying to get figured out, you gotta make sure that you request an extension, of course. Who will let you know if you need to request an extension or not as far as closing date? The title company.
Title company.
Okay.
Right.
So those are the dates that you need to watch for. Usually in Cnergy Title, what we're trying to do as soon as we receive a contract is we try to support our agents and send the critical dates to everybody. So
Love
if you
that.
didn't do it as an agent, we as title company help you and do it so that you can have them present and be super on top of each and every date.
I love that. So just to reiterate what you said, how
Yes.
not to lose your client's deposit. Most of the time it's going to have to do with the critical dates, right? So make sure when you're doing these contracts, make sure you know how many days they have to put the first deposit. If there's a second deposit, how many days for the second deposit? If there's an inspection, how many days for the inspection? If it's finance, the loan commitment. And then the lastly is the closing date. Those are the main important dates. And
Correct.
so let me ask you, when you see, I don't know if you ever experienced a client actually losing their money because of this, was the main reason because of these critical dates and they didn't meet these dates?
Yeah, sometimes in some transactions you deal with difficult sellers or with sellers that are that want to sell their property, and if something happened that is not supported by anything, right, that they believe it's crucial, they can fight that deposit and not want to give it back.
Right.
I've seen it not in my new company, but I've seen it before in the past, and it gets bad because they start fighting back and forth, and depending on how much money you have in escrow, it will be worth to go to court to fight it. So avoid that because it becomes very frustrating for the buyer, for the buyer agent, for the listing agent, and for everybody. So just watch out for those dates. And don't get into that point in which you missed a date, something happened, and then you have to
get an extension.
To
get an extension if they don't want, and if they don't want an extension, then that's when it gets risky. Got it.
Yes.
So that's it. Watch out for those dates. Write them down. Put them on your calendar. Put them alarm, whatever. Tell Siri, hey Siri, remind me 2 days. Whatever you gotta do to protect your client's deposit by all means. So
yes, for example, us Cnergy Title, we have an app, and it's called Sukam, and it is available for our clients so that they can send their first and second deposit. And we've seen that this is super convenient because sometimes things happen. The buyer didn't make it to the date. It's running really close. It's 6 p.m. in the afternoon, and that's his last date. This app allows him to send us the deposit via their cell phones. They just need a check. So it's like depositing a check in their bank account.
Into the ATM kind of thing, like, or taking a screenshot with your phone. It's like
exactly.
just so easy. Okay.
And they will get an escrow letter in minutes by the date that they need to do it. And it doesn't have like a time frame saying that you have to deposit it before 6 o'clock in the afternoon. It could be anytime. You'll receive the escrow letter like that because that app is integrated with our bank account and our system. So
amazing.
It's that helps clients a lot when they're running too close to send us the deposits. Yes.
Let me ask you a tricky question regarding critical dates and all of this. It's something that I still don't know. Let's say when the person has the 3 days, the 5 days, the 20 days, whatever these days, are these calendar days or are these business days that we're always talking about?
We're talking calendar days.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, like business days are when it counts the weekend, right?
No, business days Monday through Friday. Calendar days, o sea, like
it's calendar days. I'm sorry, calendar days.
So if it's on a Friday and you have 3 days to put deposit, it's got to be on a Monday. Is right?
Yes. If it's on a Friday, can you repeat, please? Just repeat.
Let's say we go under contract today.
Yes.
Not today. Today's Wednesday, but on a Friday, right? Friday, and you have 3 days to put your deposit, right?
So it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
So that's what I'm saying. So the weekends do count.
The weekends do count. I apologize if I mix them.
Fine.
But
so weekends do count. Every single day counts. Okay, that's something that.
If the third day it's a Sunday, then you send the deposit on a Monday. Okay. The Sunday will not count. If the third day is a Sunday, then it'll move automatically to a Monday.
Wow,
and the same thing
that's a good tip.
If the closing date will be Monday, Sunday will be Monday. Yeah.
So if it falls on a Sunday, it could be pushed to Monday with these dates, with these critical dates.
Correct. Yes.
There you go. That's something I just learned, and I'm sure a lot of watchers are gonna learn that too.
Yeah, it's super important. Saturdays count. You can send your deposit on a Saturday. Okay. So the only day that will push it will be Sunday.
So now that we're talking about dates, we're talking about all of these critical dates. Let's talk about something that you taught me, Isabel, a while ago, was try your best not to have a closing on a Friday. Right?
Yeah.
That is it's a super valuable tip for a lot of people. Like, if you can try to not make it on a Friday, like, do not. Why is that?
Yes.
Isabel?
Why is that? Okay. Yes, it's an advice. Okay. But we cannot always control it.
Right.
But if it ends up being on a Friday, just make sure that it could get done early in the morning or before noon. Why? Most people that have a closing date on a Friday usually are thinking that they're moving on Saturday and they start coordinating everything. Just remember that the only way for you to move into a property is once the title company signs with you and then disperse the transaction, meaning we send the funds to the seller. If it's a cash transaction, it's easy. Most likely we will not have any problems.
Right.
But if it's a finance transaction, if we end up getting the package the same day, if we end up closing by 3 o'clock, just remember that we have until 5 p.m. to send the wire to the seller. So if you close at 3, let's say, and it's an end of the month in which banks are full of files, you end up signing by 4. We take your package, we scan it to the lender. We gotta wait for them to review each and every page that the buyer signed. And then they're gonna give us a funding authorization. Without that funding authorization, we cannot fund unless it's those type of transactions in which the lender does not require funding authorization. But if they do, it's very risky because we only have until 5 to send those funds. So if we pass that time and the buyer already coordinate trucks and and it's moving, then it's going to be a mess because the seller will not give the buyer the keys until they receive the money. So as an advice, try to, if it's a Friday, try to accommodate it in the morning. It's better. Or if there's nothing that we could do and it's going to be in the afternoon, never coordinate moving trucks, never coordinate anything unless that transaction is already disbursed.
It's fully closed. Love that. I mean, it's a super valuable tip. Believe it or not, it's gonna help a lot of people. It's gonna help, save headaches and save stress. Right? Try to do it on a Thursday at most.
And it's important for agents to really set expectations with their clients, because I understand, like, the buyers are super excited, they're moving, right? And you want them to be super happy, but if you understand the process of what happens after you sign, and the risk of closing in an afternoon, very tight to the cut-off time for a title company, then you'll be able to explain that ahead. The client will understand that, and then everybody will be okay.
Going back to communication is key.
Yes,
absolutely.
Correct.
So Isabel, so if I'm a buyer's agent right now, and we're having we're about to go under contract, have a transaction, what should my buyers know? What should I tell my buyer as a real estate agent?
Okay, before closing, you mean, right?
Right.
Okay. So if you are preparing your buyer before a closing, if it's a cash transaction, what he needs to know before he goes to signing is what is his cash to close. Okay. Most likely the title company will send an email one day before the closing with the closing statement, with the HUD, if it's a cash transaction, or the CD, so that they know what the amount of money that they'll need to wire to us. It's important that they see it. It's important that they understand what they're signing. Okay.
Right.
If it's a finance transaction, they gotta know that once they receive that amount, it has to come from a source account, the one approved from the lender.
Right.
Okay, so if I'm buying under my name, the cash to close has to come from my account, not my brother, not my husband's, not my anybody. It has to come from my account, unless I'm buying with a partner or under an LLC. It has to come from a source account. Now, the other thing that I recommend a buyer to know if he's buying a cash transaction is to understand his closing costs ahead of time, knowing what he has to pay, so that when he goes to the closing table, yes, he's going to ask some questions, but he'll be okay because he already know how much he's paying as far as closing costs. If it's a finance transaction, just review, of course, their interest rate. In a finance transaction, usually a buyer receives the closing disclosure 3 days before, or a little bit ahead of time, the closing date. So they have ample time to review everything on the loan terms. So that's good for you to just follow up with your client and see if they understood everything. If not, for them to contact their lender or the title company to ask questions. Another thing that I also recommend is the homeowner's insurance policy payment. Usually, Hans, the homeowner's insurance policy payment, it's under the closing cost, and the title company takes care of paying for it. We cut the check and we send it to start their policy. But I've seen cases in which the lenders take them out and tell the clients to pay it outside closing. Just make sure, if that's the scenario, that they really do pay it, because they have to pay it the day before, or the day of the closing, or the day before, so that they can start their policy. It's super important.
Because if they don't have that, they cannot close.
No, they can close. But then we got to make sure that the buyer knows if he's paying it at closing or if he's paying it outside closing, because his homeowner's insurance policy will start from the moment the company receives payment. If they don't receive payment, they'll cancel the policy. And a buyer in a finance transaction cannot be out of homeowner's insurance.
Right.
So in scenarios, usually the title company will pay for it because it's included in the closing cost that the lender sends us. sent to us, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But in scenarios in which they're advised to pay it outside closing because of some reason,
Mm-hmm.
then make sure that the buyer is aware of that and that they do it. They cannot miss it, because if not, their policy will be canceled.
Perfect, love it. So us as a buyer's agent, we're working with the buyer. We need to make sure we look through that disclosure, and we need to make sure and see who paid if they already paid the insurance, the homeowner's insurance, or if they're about to pay. Like, we need to really pay attention to that.
Exactly. Just make sure if it's included, you know that the title company will be paying for it. If it's not included, just ask them, were you told to pay it outside closing? Yes. Okay. Make sure to contact the company and do the payment so you can start the policy.
Beautiful, love it.
Exactly.
And what if we're working with the seller?
Yeah.
What are things that our
Okay.
sellers should know prior to closing?
If you are a seller, the important thing for you to know is your seller proceeds, okay? How much they're gonna be. Of course, total closing costs. Make sure that sellers understand the closing costs. Remember that sellers usually are the ones that pay commissions.
Mm-hmm.
So the part of their closing cost is a little higher just because they have their commissions included.
Right.
So it's important that they understand also what they're paying as far as closing costs and that they're okay with it. Usually I recommend agents, if they're working with a seller or a buyer, to give their clients an estimate from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In a finance transaction, it's not a big deal for the buyer because from the beginning, the lender will disclose title and lending fees. So it's okay.
Right.
But in a cash transaction where there's not a protocol, then my recommendation is for the buyer agent to request closing costs, show it to the client so that the client see it. Or if you're representing a seller, show the estimate to the seller so that they can see how much they're gonna net approx, so that when they receive the final one, they're okay.
Correct.
The other thing is mortgage payoffs. Mortgage payoffs are very important for them to understand. Sometimes I've seen scenarios in which they see the amount and they tell me, but wait, I'm looking it online and I owe much less. And they gotta remember that when a title company requests a payoff,
Mm-hmm.
we request a payoff for more days than the closing date. And they include not only your balance at that moment, but you have a proration of interest, you have a proration if you have mortgage insurance, they'll do a proration of that as well.
Mm.
They'll include other fees to close the account. So that's why it goes a little higher.
So is this something that you see often, Isabel? You see often with the final, if they already have a loan and they're selling, that the numbers don't really match, and they ask and they start wondering.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they do ask questions like, I've seen that the amount is this, but it's going a little higher. Why? So the reason is that. So make sure that they see and that they understand that once we close a transaction and we send the wire to pay that mortgage, we cannot do the accounting and say, okay, this payoff is until June 30th. So we need to subtract that amount so that we can say, no, we cannot do that. The bank is the one that does all the accounting. So even if they receive more money up until the June 30th, they'll do proper accounting and will return that difference to the clients. And another thing is they gotta understand that if they have an escrow account, the same happens. A few weeks after, the escrow account from that mortgage that they have will return the money to them.
Beautiful.
Okay?
Beautiful. So also all things we should be communicating with their sellers if they have a loan.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Property taxes also, if the seller didn't pay for property taxes last year, they gotta understand that the title company will include them as far as closing costs. Okay,
Right.
So just watch out for that and understand that. And another thing, the last thing for them to watch out for buyer agent and seller and listing agents, buyers and sellers, is watch out for special assessments. Make sure you understand who pays for what. Are they paying it in full? Is the seller paying up until closing and then the buyers continue to pay special assessments? Those fees are super important for clients to understand, for realtors to understand as well, so that they can protect their clients.
What is the most common thing that you see as with special assessments? Do you see that most of the time, if there's already a special assessment, the sellers pay for it before closing or at closing, or
It
you
depends.
see different?
It depends on the associations. There are some associations that include and say who, if the special assessment has to be paid in full before the transfer, or if they have to pay up until the closing, and then the buyer continues doing the payment. So it usually depends.
Really? So
I
the associations could have like a like they could say yes or no, or who?
There are some, no. There are some associations,
Hmm.
okay, that if we're talking about special assessments from
Correct.
association, no,
Correct, from a
that will
condominium.
determine, yeah, that will determine um,
Who's responsible
if
for it?
exactly if the assessment has to be paid in full before the transfer or not, or if they don't specify that, then between the parties it has to be super clear. And this is super important because you can get into a really uncomfortable situation if it's not clarified from the beginning.
From the beginning, right? Yeah, I agree. Perfect. Awesome. Those are super, super important tips, super important advice to know. Especially down here in South Florida, we have so much condominiums, right? So uh,
Yeah.
it happens, I'm sure it happens often. There's always special assessments going on in most of these condos. So that's something to watch out for and communicate. Um, what was I gonna say? So what are some common mistakes, Isabel, that you see a lot of agents do? Is there something you could think about from the top of your head, like you see it often?
Common mistakes. I don't call them mistakes, but I call them like they some agents, usually the ones that are new,
Hmm.
um, they need to understand that process. It's important for them to understand what a title company does,
Right,
what a lender does, so that they can support their clients in the correct way. And then
right.
I'm gonna give you like a typical scenario.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes when we're dealing with finance transactions, the lender will say, "Okay, we're clear to close," right?
Right.
And then that clear to close, it's a little confusing because people think that once a lender says that they're clear to close, we can coordinate a closing in an hour.
Hmm.
And it doesn't happen that way. Once title is clear and once the lender is clear, okay, the next step for the lender is to submit the file to their closing department. Okay, once a closing department receives it, what they're going to do is start working on final figures, the last figures. Then after they have that, they're gonna email the title company those final figures, so
Hmm.
that the title company can put them in a closing disclosure
Right.
and just check that both fees, the cash to close, match.
Match. Mm.
If it doesn't match, you're gonna see a lot of back and forth until that figure gets finalized.
Right.
And that could be very fast, or that could take an hour. It could take a whole afternoon. It depends on the time of the month that you're closing.
Right.
Now, after you have that final figure, then what's going to happen is the lender will submit the file so that they can start preparing a package. So up until when there's a package, then we'll coordinate time, we'll coordinate place for closing. And the mistake, or not a mistake, the scenario that I'm seeing a lot is that since that clear to close is so confusing, then the realtor goes ahead and calls the client, "Hey, we got the clear to close. You're signing in an hour. I'm calling the title company." And then if in an hour nothing is happening, then they start calling the title company because the clients start calling them, and it becomes
Got you. A mess
very frustrating. Yeah, so it's important that agents understand the process,
of that clear
understand
to close.
everything's, yeah, when it's clear to close, what happened at the beginning of the transaction, what is happening when we receive that report, if there's I don't know, something in title, how
Title
does it get
issues.
fixed. Yes,
Right.
who's
Right.
responsible for what. Because if you understand all that, then what you're doing is we're all in the same page, and then you're able to communicate the same thing to the client. Even if the title company is the one sending the update, the client usually is going to go and ask you, is this okay?
I agree.
Is my property is gonna be
They're gonna expect for you
jeopardized?
as a real estate agent to
To
kind of know what's
know.
going on. Yes.
Exactly. So my advice is for you to understand the process. My advice is for you to understand the closing documents. For example, the closing disclosure and the HUD. It's important. And even if the title agent is the one that will explain numbers to the client, it's important for you as an agent to know it as well.
Right.
Why? Because if you run into a scenario in which you're requesting a cash to close, in a cash transaction, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and then this title company sends you the final HUD at 6 in the afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
right? If the client calls the closer and the closer doesn't pick up at the time and he has questions, the next person he's gonna call is you.
Right.
And even if, as I said, the title company is the one that has to be there to support and explain the documents, well, I mean, in the numbers and everything, if they call you and they ask you, where can I find my title insurance, or where can I find my closing costs? And
Yeah.
you go into the document and you take more than 5 minutes trying to look for it because you're
Right,
not
right.
familiarized with the document, then they're gonna not trust you that much, or not trust you that much, but they're gonna see that you don't know, and it doesn't look nice. But if you do know, then you're gonna be like that as an agent.
I love that. I love that. So understand your stuff, understand your disclosures,
Yes.
your closing statements, all those numbers. And if you don't understand them, contact Cnergy Title and they'll be able to help you. They'll be more than happy to go
Usually,
over it with you.
and you know what? We in our Instagram page, we advertise one-on-one trainings. They are through Zoom. You just, if you
Beautiful.
want to know a little bit about how to read a HUD one or how to understand a closing disclosure, we set personalized trainings in which we can meet. It's just 1
Beautiful.
hour. We go over the document and then we'll help you.
Amazing. So all those agents that are listening to this or are going to be listening to this, you can find Isabel Galvis at Instagram, hashtag, not hashtag, but you can find her at
Cnergy Title.
Cnergy Title. Cnergy Title. That is CN. So it's Cnergy, the
N-E.
Cnergy, Cnergy Title. You can find her on Instagram. I'll leave her tag here. You can find I'll leave it there so you guys can check it out. Again,
Yes.
if you guys want to understand how the disclosure works, if you have any questions with disclosure, the closing, all those things, they can go over it with you on a 101. I mean, who is doing that right now? What title company does that? That is amazing that you're offering that to agents. That's incredible. So absolutely. So
Yes.
there shouldn't be a reason how that an agent doesn't know how to read these things, because if they
That's
don't,
correct.
they could just contact you. Easy.
That's
Right?
correct. Yes.
So last question, I want to ask you, like, how, with everything that we're going through with social distancing and all this craziness going
Yes.
on, how are closings taking place? Tell us a little bit of what's going on as with closings and that.
Okay. So nowadays, with all this COVID-19 going on, there's different ways of closing. Okay. So let's start with the first one, which is a cash transaction. So for a cash transaction, as you know, the buyer doesn't need to sign any document that requires a notary stamp, unless the closing agent asks him to sign something, an affidavit that he will need to sign. Okay.
Right.
But most likely he just signs the HUD one and a closing disclosure, a closing agreement, which is a document that has some disclosures from the title company. Before this COVID-19, title companies were not authorizing e-signatures for the closing statement or
Right.
closing agreement. Nowadays, there's more flexibility, and we are accepting the buyer to sign a HUD via dot loop, let's say. So that
Beautiful.
makes it convenient for a buyer that it's buying a property as a cash. For a seller, which is the one signing documents that require a notary stamp,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say they don't want to come to the office, now since 2020, at the beginning, we're using remote online notarization. which is a platform that allows us to do closings like this, okay, via your computer. It has, of course, a system in place in which they'll do an identification process. It'll allow us to upload all the documents that will require signature, and then we'll meet you, the notary, and one of our team members.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll go over all the documents, they'll notarize, and that's it. You don't have to come to the office. You can do it from your home.
Love
and it
it.
will have a notary stamp, an online notary stamp. Exactly.
So it's
That's
super
for
easy.
sellers.
That's for
If
sellers.
we don't,
Perfect.
that's for sellers. If we don't, if the seller doesn't want to do online remote notarization,
Mm-hmm.
then we can send a mobile closer to their location at any time it's convenient for them. Of course, our mobile closer will come with gloves and a mask, and she'll provide pens to everybody. She'll explain all the documents, and then she'll bring the documents back to us. That's another way for sellers in a cash transaction.
Awesome. So
Now,
cash transaction
have,
buyers. So just to reiterate, cash transaction buyer does not have to be present. If it's cash,
no,
they could just do a digital signature via that loop.
and that's it.
Easy. Sellers, they can also do it. Starting now, they can also do it remotely, or they could you can send someone a mobile closer over there if they like.
Exactly.
Perfect. Easy.
Now of course, we're in the office. So if the seller feels comfortable coming to the office, we're there. Usually the only ones signing at the table, it's Clarita, which is my partner, and I, and we'll do the closings there. Okay.
Awesome.
Now for a finance transaction hands, the same thing, sellers, mobile closers, or remote online notarization. Or if they feel comfortable, they can come to the office. Of course, they need to wear a mask. We'll make sure that they'll sit
Please,
far from
social
us.
distancing, please.
Exactly. And then, exactly, so that they feel comfortable as well, and we all protect
Absolutely.
each other. But if it's a finance transaction, it's tricky because in order for us to use remote online notarization, the lender has to approve it. Not all lenders have approved this platform yet.
Right.
So we need to coordinate this ahead of time to make sure and to ask the lender if they will approve this. If they say yes, then we'll do it this way. If they say no, the other option is send a mobile closer to wherever they're at. But the cool thing about this is that if for some reason they are in Germany, they are in Colombia, they are in Venezuela, they are in I don't know, in Dubai, then if the lender approves this, we can use the platform for them to sign all their loan documents, and we will be able to finalize the transaction.
Amazing.
Now, one thing that you gotta know is that if we're dealing with a remote online notarization closing, and we're dealing with a seller that doesn't have a social security, we cannot do it. Okay, through the platform.
What if the buyer doesn't have? It's okay. It's
We
just a
cannot do it.
seller, or both
Yes.
parties need to have social security number.
We'll have to ask the lender to see if for buyers, but usually I don't think they will allow it.
Perfect.
I don't know. We'll
Makes
have
sense.
to just check if we're dealing with foreign buyers. But usually if they have to have social security in order to use the platform. Okay.
Perfect.
Now, another thing is if we're dealing with a seller that is a foreign national, that of course doesn't have a social security, it's in Mexico, Colombia, and they're selling a property, they cannot fly yet. Okay, they cannot come to just sign the documents here. Then another option for them, just for you to know, would be for them to receive the documents, look for a notary. We can translate the documents to Spanish or the language where they're at.
Okay.
They'll notarize the documents with a Colombian notary or a Mexican notary, wherever they're at. They'll send us the original copies. We'll translate the stamps and the language in the document, and that will be fine. Because nowadays I know that nobody wants to go to an embassy. So the other option for foreign sellers that cannot come to the US yet, okay, and that
notary.
can go, exactly, cannot go to an embassy.
Right.
The way for them to sell their property will be for the title company to translate the documents, send them the docs. They can look for a notary in the country. They can
Wow.
notarize the documents in Spanish, and then they'll
Mhm.
have to send us the original ones here. Once we receive it, we'll translate the documents back into English, we'll translate the stamp, and then that will be approved for us to
And when
close.
you were talking about sending back and forth between these the notaries, is it like mail, like FedEx mail, or email, or how are they uploading? How are they sending you these documents?
How do we? Okay, we'll send them via email. We'll
Okay,
send the
okay,
documents to the seller via email. They'll print them,
okay. Got you, got you. I wasn't sure
and then they'll
how.
have to mail them via FedEx, UPS,
So they okay. That's
or
what I'm saying. So they have to mail like the originals.
the originals
So
via
that could
FedEx or
take,
UPS. But the
so that
way
could
that
take. Okay.
we send them the documents have to be via email.
Okay, okay. Now I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, that could take a little bit longer if you're closing that way, but it gives the seller that is not
If you
in
do it
town.
ahead of time, yeah.
Absolutely.
If
But
if you do it if you do it ahead of time, you'll have time to coordinate all this. Okay, because the title company will know. And
right,
just
right,
know
right.
that once we receive title search, we can start preparing seller docs.
Correct, correct. Awesome. Yeah.
Now, yes. Another thing that you're gonna know, Hans, is that when you're using the platform, you gotta coordinate ahead of time also. Because before COVID-19, you could coordinate everything through the platform the same day. Nowadays, everybody wants to close through Run. So you gotta
Right,
make
right.
sure that we do this.
People would rather not
Yeah,
be there, right? People would rather close from home, from their office, or wherever they are. So absolutely, people would rather do
yes,
it digitally. So
yes.
if that's the case, we could give our clients the option. Hey, you don't have to be present. You can do it remotely. So we just need to communicate with the title company and let them know how our clients are preferring to close, and if they're preferring to close remotely, then we need to know ahead of time so you guys can start preparing all those stuff.
And if there's a lender involved, we need to make sure that the lender approves it and that
Correct.
both have social securities if they're outside the country and we're using this platform. Exactly.
Correct. 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 Oh, I'm sorry. So just to reiterate, so if they're inside of the country and they don't have social security, it's okay.
Is that if that's the case, we'll just send them a mobile closer.
Right. Why not?
Yeah, we don't need to go, exactly. We don't need to do it through Run. We can just send the mobile closer to wherever they're
Perfect.
at. And
Awesome.
since we're underwritten by Fidelity, we can use any notary in any state.
Beautiful.
So
Easy, easy, easy. Amazing. You just gave so much tips and value for all kinds of agents, new agents, seasoned agents. I mean, so again, so to reiterate everything, do not lose your client's money. The way their deposit, the way you do this is again by making sure you meet all the critical dates, write all the dates down, have the title company do it for you. If you're too busy or you cannot do it, remind yourself, remind your clients there's very important dates. Um, and then remember the things that you should know as a buyer's agent prior to closing, or things that you should know as a seller's agent prior to closing, what things you should be looking out for, right?
correct.
Communicating to your title company, communicating to the lenders, making sure the numbers match in both documents that they will be sending you. And then also giving your clients options that if they don't want to be, close in person, they could do it remotely. If it's finance, make sure that the lenders are allowing it. Um, Beautiful. I mean, this is amazing. I really, really appreciate all this. Is there anything else that you want to add before
Yes.
we get to the fun questions?
Yes. You asked me what's like a normal mistake, maybe
Right. So
that
a common mistake.
a common mistake. As I say, I don't call them mistakes, but just make sure that if you're dealing with a buyer that is buying a property that belongs to an association or a condominium,
Mm-hmm.
just make sure that they call from ahead of time to apply for that condominium or to that association because they don't know. So if they don't do it in a timely manner, there are some associations that could take 10 business days, 1 month. And if we're clear, I mean, title company is clear, if we're dealing with a lender that is clear, but the association or the condominium has not approved the
Right.
buyer, then
Right.
you cannot close. So just make sure that if you're dealing with a a buyer that is buying a property under association or a condominium, they call that condominium and ask and apply ahead of time.
That is a
That's my last thing.
that's a super good point. Absolutely. I mean, I've seen that happen. Well, going back to the critical dates, applying to the condo association is part of the critical dates. Usually the standard is 5 days after execution date. You need to start the condo application approval. Sometimes, yeah, it could be so busy that you forgot about it, or it's hard to reach them, or it's hard to find where the application is. I've had it that many times the listing agent has sent me the wrong application, the old one they had, then they changed companies, a different one. So, get it, make sure it's the right one, call them, communicate with the association, and apply. You're about to say something.
And yes, I just remember another thing about that, Hans, and it's super important for all agents. If a buyer, let's say it's buying under Isabel Galvis,
Right.
okay, and in the middle of the transaction, I decide I want to add Juan Miguel, another person into title, okay, and I already applied to the association under Isabel Galvis. Make sure you notify that to the association and you apply as Isabel Galvis and Juan Miguel. Because if you forget to do that, and if you're adding somebody to the title and you go up into the last moment and you bring an approval that says that Isabel Galvis is the only one approved to the association, then you're going to have an issue there, because you'll need Isabel and Juan Miguel in the approval if you decide to add somebody to title in the middle of the transaction.
So even if that other person or either of them are not going to be living in the unit, let's say it's an investment property, they both still need to be applying because they're both on the title?
Yes, because when you record the title of the property, you record the title and the certificate of approval
from the condo association.
Exactly.
And it has to match. Names need to match.
If not, you'll have an issue there. Exactly. The same thing. I'm buying under a personal name. I decide to transfer it into an LLC. The same thing. I need to notify the association, make sure that they approve LLCs to be owners of the property. Okay. And they need to have the LLC name on the approval to match the deed, which is the title of the property. So any change you do in the middle of a transaction in title, make sure that if you are applying to association, just exactly, because they have to match.
Super good tips, super valuable information. Wow, amazing. Let's go to some fun questions before we finish the show, Isabel. All right. Let's get a little fun energy going. So Isabel, tell me, if you could compare yourself with any animal, what animal would that be?
If I can compare myself with any animal, I'll do it. I'll say a lion, but it's not true. I'll say
but not true. Lion, but no, not a lion.
No, I'll say a dolphin. I am a people person, and I think that they're super sweet, and I consider myself like that. I'm very approachable, and I care a lot for people, and I think that dolphins are animals that are like kind of like that. So I compare to a dolphin.
Oh, that's so cute. I love that. That's beautiful. I haven't heard no one say dolphin. I love it. Especially we live here in Miami. I see dolphins in the back where I live all the time. This is the place.
I'll say a lion, but no.
Yeah, I think a dolphin goes better with you. What is the trip of the lifetime for you? The trip of your lifetime. What would that be?
The trip of my lifetime was last summer that I did the Camino de Santiago de Compostela, which is in the north of Spain. I went from Sarria to Santiago de Compostela walking. So it was 25 kilometers every single day, 25 to 17 kilometers every day. And I did it with my parents and my cousin. It was 6 days walking. So we started at 7 in the morning and we finished at 5 in the afternoon, but we went through amazing forests and amazing towns, and it was very beautiful. Like, it was one of the best experiences in my life
That is
that I
gorgeous.
recommend to everybody
Is
to
that
do it.
the
Yes,
absolutely recommend? I'm gonna look it up. Is this the north of
it's
Spain?
amazing.
The north of Spain,
The
you
north of
said?
Spain, in Galicia. Yeah, in Galicia. There's the full I don't know how to say it in English, but you walk 800 kilometers from France. But
Ah,
I
that's like
did
the
the one
full.
from
That's like the full thing. You did like
yes,
the half
from
thing.
Sarria to yeah. The thing is, like, if you do the full one, you have to be there for a month, which I think that would be amazing. But when you go there, I did the one from Sarria to Santiago, and the people you see, the energy, the
Man,
scenery, it
that
was
is
amazing. It's one
sounds
of that yeah.
that sounds so awesome. I gotta check that out. So my next question, I'm sure you're gonna say something like that refers to that. So if we finish this interview and you leave the house and you find $10 million, what would you do with that money?
If I finish the interview and I
Let's just say
uh,
you found a lottery ticket because $10 million just be sitting there. It's crazy. But found a lottery ticket and you got $10 million, Isabel. The
well,
full
the
the
first
full walk, right? the full 1 month walk in Spain.
yeah,
That's
well, what I'll do two things. I'll do two things. First, I'll buy a building for sure.
smart,
A
smart,
building, yes. And the second, I'll go for a month to travel the world, everywhere, every
beautiful.
single part. That will be the two things that I'll do
That's
first.
it. That's
There's
all
so
you
many
need.
others that I'll do. Yeah, but those are the things that I know I'll do for sure if I find $10 million. I'm gonna go out and see if maybe when we finish the interview.
You should go out and see.
Bye.
Hey, but if you buy that building, remember me. I'll be your agent. We'll buy I don't know, a
You'll
hundred
sell all the
floor.
units.
We'll buy the whole building for $10 million. Let's do it. Real
Yes.
estate investing is the way to go. So you're very, very intelligent because you made
Yes.
the right move. And then with the other money, you travel the world and enjoy. Isabel, it's been amazing having you. You gave so much
No,
tips,
thank
so
you so
much
much.
advice to the agents that are going to be listening, and also to myself. I really appreciate. Again, anyone that wants to find Isabel, you can find her on Instagram with Cnergy Title. Her name is Isabel Galvis. She'll be more than happy to help. If you are having any questions with title, with reading disclosures, reading closing documents, she'll be more than happy to sit down with you in a Zoom meeting and go over whatever questions you have. So again, Isabel, thank you so, so much for being here
No, my
with us
pleasure.
today.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. It's amazing. I believe that, or I think I know that what you're doing, it's super amazing because you're creating so much value for other agents. So keep it up. And thank you for having me. It's an honor for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Isabel. Have a good night. Talk to you later.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.